right, let's dive in. Today, we're digging into the story of Polly Bartlett.
The Murderess of Slaughterhouse Gulch.
That's the one. We're working from a Wikipedia article that cites a bunch of different sources.
Yeah.
And I guess our goal is to figure out if she was a real person
Right.
or just, like a Wild West legend.
That's what makes this one so interesting right off the bat. You know?
Yeah.
Did she actually exist, or is
Yeah.
it all myth?
Okay, so let's just get into it.
Yeah.
The story goes that back in 1868 in Wyoming territory, Polly and her father, Jim.
Oh, Jim Bartlett.
Yeah, they ran this in,
Mm-hmm.
and they supposedly poisoned and buried up to 22 guests.
Wow, up to 22.
Yeah, that's what they say.
That's a lot of people.
And get this, they allegedly targeted wealthy travelers who were carrying gold.
Oh, smart. Taking advantage of the gold rush.
Exactly. It was prime time for that.
Yeah.
And the way they did it, supposedly, was with arsenic-laced
Oh, wow.
food and drinks.
Classic, but
Mhm.
also brutal.
Right. So, I mean, even the inn's location seems kind of significant here,
Yeah,
right?
totally. Like strategically placed.
Yeah, it was on a popular road, almost like a
A trap.
yeah.
It's like, perfectly situated to catch all those people looking to strike it rich.
Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. Their alleged criminal activity, it actually started way before Wyoming.
Really?
Yeah, back east in Ohio,
Wow.
where they ran a saloon.
Interesting.
And it wasn't murder back then, right?
I don't think so.
It was more of a
Like a con.
a con game. Polly would lure men in, and then her father would rob them.
Classic grift.
Right. But then, somewhere along the line, things escalated.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this claim that their very first alleged murder, it earned them $4,000.
Wow.
So, maybe that success combined with, like, the Wild West lawlessness
Wild West, yeah.
pushed them down a darker path.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, right? Like, what changed for them?
So when did things start to fall apart for them?
Well, the turning point seems to be the disappearance of Theodore Fountain.
Oh, right. This son of that wealthy mine owner.
Exactly. And his disappearance, it really set things in motion.
I bet his father had some serious resources to put towards finding him.
Oh, for sure. Bernard Fountain, Theodore's dad,
Mm-hmm.
he hired the Pinkerton Detective Agency.
Whoa, the Pinkertons. That's like,
The big leagues?
the big leagues of detectives, especially back then.
Yeah, that tells you something right there, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Really does. So tell me a little bit about the Pinkertons.
Well, they were known for being thorough and sometimes, a little ruthless, but they got results. They were really good at solving cases. And their involvement means that the authorities, they took Theodore's disappearance very seriously.
Okay, so did the Pinkertons, crack the case?
Well, some accounts say they played a big part in uncovering the truth.
Mm-hmm.
They supposedly found the bodies of the victims buried on Bartlett's property.
Wow, that's a grim discovery.
Turns those rumors into a terrifying reality.
So how did Polly and Jim finally face justice?
Well, the details of their capture, they're a little fuzzy.
Well,
Some stories say that a relative of one of the victims decided to take revenge himself
oh, wow.
and shot Jim Bartlett. Others say that law enforcement finally caught up with them.
So it's not totally clear.
It's hard to say for sure. After all this time, the stories get a little mixed up.
Yeah, that makes sense. So even their downfall is kind of a mystery.
Yeah, exactly.
But wait, there's more. Right.
There is.
What happened to Polly? How does her story end?
Well, it ends pretty dramatically, too.
Okay.
She was shot in her jail cell
Oh.
by someone connected to one of the victims. It's like, frontier justice. But here's the really fascinating part.
Okay.
This happened while Esther Morris was in office.
Wait, Esther Morris.
Yeah.
The first female justice of the peace.
The first one, yeah.
Wow, that's
Pretty amazing, right?
yeah. I mean, that must have been a crazy time to be breaking barriers for women's rights out in the Wild West.
Especially in the Wild West.
Yeah. So what did she do about Polly's death?
Well, that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't press charges against the guy who killed her.
Really?
Yep.
That's a little unexpected.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
People think maybe she was trying to, prevent more unrest. The town was pretty shaken up by everything that happened.
Right.
Whether or not the Bartletts were actually guilty, it was...
Yeah, it was a big deal.
It really was.
So...
And maybe she thought that, more violence would just make it worse.
And it kind of shows how
Yeah.
justice worked back then.
It does.
Sometimes they had to prioritize keeping the peace
Exactly.
over,
Yeah.
strict legal procedures.
Yeah. It's a different world back then, for sure.
Okay, but here's where things get really interesting, right?
Okay.
You said whether or not the Bartletts were actually guilty.
I did.
And that's because some Wyoming historians, they don't even believe any of this happened.
Yeah, that's the wild part.
So despite all these like crazy stories and accounts, they're skeptical.
Totally. There's just not enough evidence to back it up, you know? Like, there's not a lot of primary source documents from that time. The story mostly comes from later publications, like a 1963 article in Real West magazine.
Wow. So
Yeah.
are we saying that Polly Bartlett might just be like folklore?
It's possible.
Like a ghost story to scare people?
Maybe.
But if it's not true, why has it stuck around for so long?
Well, even if it's not completely true, it still tells us something about the Wild West, doesn't it?
I guess so.
And about how powerful storytelling can be.
Yeah.
I mean, people have been talking about this story for a long time, even without any real proof.
It's interesting, right?
It is.
I mean, we've always been fascinated by outlaws and frontier justice.
Oh, totally.
Right.
It's a classic theme.
Yeah, the Wild West, it's like this time and place where, you know, the rules didn't always apply. It was full of opportunity, but also danger. And Polly Bartlett, whether she was real or not, she represents both sides of that.
So even if the historical evidence is kind of thin, why do you think this story is still so popular?
I think it taps into something primal, you know?
Oh.
Like the idea that someone who seems totally normal could do such terrible things. It's scary, but also fascinating.
Okay.
And then there's the whole like romanticism of the Wild West, right?
Yeah, like cowboys and stuff.
Exactly. But, you know, it wasn't all sunshine and heroes. There's a dark side, too.
And Polly Bartlett represents that.
Exactly. She's like a symbol of the dangers hiding beneath the surface.
Yeah, like a reminder that not everything was so glamorous back then.
Exactly.
It wasn't all heroic cowboys and,
right.
you know.
Beautiful sunsets.
Yeah.
There was a lot of darkness, too.
And we can't forget that.
No, we can't.
Okay, but also, you know, it's just a good story, right?
It is.
Even if some of the details might be made up, it's still mysterious and intriguing.
Oh, yeah.
And people love that stuff.
They do.
It reminds us that history isn't always, you know,
Yeah.
neat and tidy.
Well, it can be messy.
Yeah, especially in a place like the Wild West where stories were mostly passed down orally
Right.
and probably changed a lot along the way.
Exactly. Who knows what really happened?
So I guess we're left with, like, this big question mark.
Yeah.
Do we believe the story of Polly Bartlett, or do we just say it's a good story,
Right.
but not real?
That's the thing about history, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes we just don't know for sure.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
It makes us think critically,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, we have to look at the evidence or the lack of evidence and decide for ourselves.
I think this whole deep dive has shown
Yeah.
just how fascinating the Wild West is.
It really is.
Yeah.
But why, though?
Why is it so fascinating?
Yeah, like, why are we still so interested in these stories about outlaws and frontier justice?
Well, I think it's because
Yeah.
the Wild West represents this time
Yeah.
of, like, endless possibility.
Okay.
Like a world without all the rules and restrictions of today.
Interesting.
It's an escape, you know? A place of adventure
Right.
where you can make a fortune
Yeah.
and create your own destiny.
And Polly Bartlett,
Yeah.
she's like the perfect example of that.
In a way, she is.
Right. Whether
Yeah.
she was real or not,
Mm-hmm.
she was this woman who broke the rules
Yeah.
in a world dominated by men.
Exactly.
It's a story that still resonates with us today.
Oh, absolutely. It speaks to our fascination with people who
Mhm.
live outside the lines, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
But it also reminds us
Yeah.
that the past is complicated.
Mm.
Truth and legend can get all tangled up.
Right, making it hard to know
Yeah.
what really happened.
Exactly.
So for our listener who's been with us on this journey
Mm-hmm.
through this story of Polly Bartlett,
Yeah.
what's the main takeaway?
The main takeaway, I'd say, stay curious. Don't just accept any story you hear.
Great.
Dig deeper, ask questions, and look for those primary sources.
Yeah, good advice. And hey,
Yeah.
if you're ever in Wyoming,
Mm-hmm.
you got to visit South Pass City.
Oh, yeah.
Walk those streets, imagine the saloons, the prospectors.
It's like stepping back in time.
Right. Maybe you'll even feel a connection to this story.
Yeah, whether it's true or not.
It's captured imaginations for generations.
It has.
Well, I think that about wraps up
Yeah.
our deep dive into the story of Polly Bartlett.
The Murderess of Slaughterhouse Gulch.
Was she a real villain? or just a product of Wild West mythology.
We may never know for sure.
And that's the beauty of it.
It is.
The Wild West, a place where truth and legend become one.